Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Paul Chamberlain, the Air Force guy, here with Everything RVs podcast. I do appreciate everyone out there watching here on YouTube or listening there on your favorite streaming service. Now, if this is the first time that you're watching or listening, please do give me a comment, give me a shout out, and if you don't mind, it won't cost you anything, share this out. There are so many people out there that need this information, and I do appreciate giving this information out. Now, this is my first Friday podcast. So for those of you that have been listening and watching, you've noticed that over the last couple months, I've been doing a Monday podcast, and most of those have been interviews. And because of the number of people I have lined up to interview, I decided to add a second podcast in here. And this is going to be just me answering your questions, as well as giving you the information that you need so you make an educated decision. Because my job here at this podcast is very simple. I'm going to provide you with the information, fun information, also places you want to go camp, how to do things, tips and tricks. I mean, all kinds of stuff. But my job is to help you, for those of you that want to go camping, make memories that will last a lifetime. So subscribe, like, comment, and share. But let's get started. So tonight's podcast, and I say tonight because I'm actually obviously recording this at a different time, but in this podcast, it's all about, when and if you should winterize your camper. Now, for most of you that might have known me already, I was from the Maryland area. And for the most part up in that area in Maryland, we basically said after Thanksgiving was about the cutoff time as when you would absolutely, positively want to winterize your camper. Now, there were times when, you could go camping all the way up to Christmas, but there's a lot that happens. So let me give you a general rule of thumb, and this isn't set in stone, but it's kind of a basic idea as far as to give you the idea of when you should winterize. If you're in a climate that is, the weather might be getting down into the upper 20s in the evening, but it's getting up into the 40s and 50s during the day, typically that is not a long enough freeze for it to be an issue with your camper. Now, it still could be, but typically it's not an issue. So keep that in mind. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be going through the steps on, in the event that you decided to winterize your own camper, how you should go about doing it. So let's start with this. First of all, and by the way, it is a very simple job. It is just a little bit time consuming. Now, the way I'm going to be going through this is you're going to need an air compressor and you're going to need some antifreeze. Now, typically, the amount of antifreeze that you need for a camper, your standard type camper that has maybe an outside shower, you have a black tank rinse, you've got a kitchen sink, and you have one bathroom. Typically, that's like 2 gallons. Now, when you add an outside kitchen, you add like a washer dryer, you add an ice maker, you add a dishwasher, that's when you're going to be probably adding 3 or 4 gallons of antifreeze. Now, the way that I am going to be telling you to do it, if you do it this way, you run less of a risk of having any issues. And that is because we're going to be using an air compressor first. By getting all the water out of the system, you have less chance of having diluted antifreeze in the spigots and the areas that are going to be critical that you winterize. So, and there's a few steps I'm going to go over with you that a lot of people miss. So do stay tuned throughout this podcast here. So let's start with the first things first. What you're going to want to do is, first thing, you're going to want to make sure you drain your fresh water system. By the way, this is something that if you're out camping it's your last camping trip, this is something you could do right there at the campground because you'll have everything you need. You'll be able to be hooked up to sewer and so forth. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to drain your freshwater system, or tank, I should say. You're going to go ahead and drain your gray and black tanks. Make sure that they're all drained and make sure they're cleaned out, especially that black tank. Now, something I highly recommend that you get for cleaning out that black tank, me personally, I have stopped using the black tank rinse. I think that they're worthless, in my opinion. Everybody's, able to have their own opinion. I have my reasons. You could check my clogged RV toilet if you would like to. I wish I would have had this thing at that time, because the black tank rinse did nothing to clear that problem. But I would recommend that you use what they call a swivel stick, and that you're putting that down in through your toilet. And boy, I'll tell you, the amount of force that water puts through there, you get rid of everything in that tank. It does a phenomenal job. So number one, make sure that your freshwater tank is clean. The last thing you want to do is having a surprise when you open up that cap next year when you go camping. So get that good and clean. So you have that done. Then what you're going to do is you're going to open up your low point drains. Now, when I'm talking about your low point drains, typically you'll see a blue and a red tube underneath your camper. And most of the time, that is where the thing is to turn it to open up your low point drains. Open them up. Now, let me back up and explain one thing too, is I would highly recommend that before you start doing any of this, make sure that your water heater has been turned off. Make sure that you've run enough water through that water heater to get the water where it's not hot. Because if those of you if you were camping, that's the last thing you want to do. So do that. I would also tell you, before you start doing any of this, disconnect your water hose. Open up a faucet on the inside, or if you have an outside shower, you could do that as well. That way there, when you open up that low point drain on the outside, you don't get sprayed. Okay, and there'll be another thing I'm going to go over here in a minute. So open up your low point drains. Again, most of the people are going to be able to see them underneath their camper, and that's where the little dial or the place that you open up. Some have just caps on them. Some of them you might have to go inside your camper, and you might have to go ahead and open up the valve inside the camper in order for low point drains, also for your freshwater tank and so forth. So locate those and get those done. Once you do that, then what you're going to want to do is you are going to want to drain your water heater. Now, the reason why I had you open your low point drains first is to get the pressure off the system. The last thing you want to be doing is opening up a water heater with pressure on it. You don't want pressure on it, and you darn sure don't want to have hot water in that water heater. So there should be no pressure on the system at this point, and you're going to go ahead and drain that water. Again, make sure, by the way, I'll have a list. I'm going to put a list of this down below the video. It's going to walk you through. If anybody has any questions, you could reach out to me. My contact information will be down below this video as well as this podcast. So feel free to reach out to me if you do have any questions. So now you're going to open up your water heater. Now on that water heater, before you open it up, if you want to just make sure that there's, as a safety feature, want to make sure that there is no pressure on it, you have a pressure relief valve that is on the water heater. You can just flip that up and you'll notice no water's coming out. You're going to need a good sized socket, or socket wrench with an extension to break that bad boy loose. Now, you have the two different water heaters that I'm going to go over. I'm going over your standard gas or electric or gas and electric type water heaters. I am not explaining to you how to do your on-demand water heaters. I would highly recommend that you check out some videos on that, because there are some nuances with that, and that gets to be rather tricky. So I'm talking about your typical Atwood and Suburban water heaters that are your standard ones that have a plug. Now, how do you know which one you have? Your Suburban water heater is a steel tank, and that's going to have a threaded plug that's going to be in there, and it's going to be metal. Your Atwood water heater is an aluminum tank, so you don't have an anti-rod like you do in the Suburban. That'll be the plastic drain plug, and you just take that off. Do not get on the Atwood water heaters, do not substitute a metal plug for that plastic plug. There is a reason why they went with plastic, and that is so it does not have a corrosion issue. You substitute that for something that is metal, and it is not the correct metal, you will have issues, and the last thing you want to do is be replacing a water heater. Okay, so now you're going to go ahead and hook up your air compressor to your city water inlet. Now they make adapters for you to do this. It's just a simple connection. You want to make sure that when you're connecting here, that you're not using more than 40 psi. I typically would set it about 35. You don't want more than 40 psi going in there. Some people will go ahead and use a water pressure regulator when they're doing this, or some type of regulator to make sure that they're not putting too much pressure through it. Now, what you're going to be starting with, you're going to be starting with the water heater first. So all you do is you're hooking this thing up. You've got your low point drains closed. All your faucets and everything are closed. You're going to blow out. You just turn it on. By the way, you're going to need to, so you have your everything set up. You're going to blow it out. And once you start putting water, the air pressure through there, because you have the plug out of your water heater, you're going to notice the water coming out of your water heater. So blow that until you get the majority of the water out of there. You'll be able to tell when you're done. Now, once you blow out the water heater, at that point, what you're going to do is bypass the water heater. So now we're through doing with the water heater at this point. Okay, so once you are done with blowing out the water heater, by the way, you have one of two different ways of actually putting antifreeze in your system. If you don't, and I would say the majority of RVs these days have what they call a winterization kit installed at the water pump. A lot of your campers, they have on the outside, they have a Nautilus system, and all you're doing is you're dealing with it right there. It'll take care of it, and you're able to work right from there. But for those of you that have the winterization part on your water pump, we'll get to that part there as well. But now once you blew out the water heater, now you're going to start blowing out any of the faucets, sinks, toilets, everything. So start somewhere, whether it be your outside shower or whatever. Let's just say we start with the kitchen. Open your kitchen sink. You're going to blow that out. And it'll spray and so forth. Once you see no water on that, shut that off. Now you're going to go to, let's say, your bathroom sink. Open that up. Then you'll do your shower. Do the same thing in the shower. Then you'll do the toilet. Then, very important that you go out, if you have an outside kitchen, that you do, that you go ahead and blow out those, or that sink if you have it. If you have a washing machine, make sure that you blow that out. In the event that you've never used, let's say a lot of people have these hookups in their camper and they've never used the parts for the wash machine. I would highly recommend that you might want to consider at least opening them and blowing those out, because we're going to re-winterize them as well. On the outside, if you just have sprayer ports, make sure you go ahead and blow those out as well. Hook up the hose to it and have your sprayer and get that water out of those. Once you're done with all of that stuff, then what you're going to want to do is open up your low point drains and blow those out. Okay? So that's all that. Now, again, I'm back to the point. If you have the winterization kit on there, you're only going to need 2, 3, or 4 gallons of antifreeze, depending on how many things you've got to winterize. Well, let's just go with the standard style camper, where it is just 2 gallons. To me, I always grabbed a 1/3 gallon just in case. I mean, it's cheap enough where it's not going to be a big deal. You're better to use too much than not enough. So keep that in mind. But now we're going to go ahead and start running the antifreeze through the system. If you have the Nautilus system, or you're going to have a connection port right there, and all you're going to do is turn the little knobs according to winterization, and you're going to run it through that part. If you have the winterization kit on the water pump, you're just going to take that hose and you're going to put it in the antifreeze. At that point, you're going to be turning on the water pump, and you're going to start at your kitchen sink, go to the bathroom sink, do the toilet, do your shower. Make sure you run it through both cold and hot spigots, okay? Don't be running, just do one at a time. Make sure you're getting it through both lines. Then you want to get your outside shower. You want to get your outside spigots. You want to get your outside, if you have a sink out there, get all that done. And then if you have a dishwasher, if you have your washer area, you're going to need to do that. The dishwasher and or an ice maker, they're a little bit different. I'll cover those at the end. So just hold off on that at this point because you're not going to be able to really do that. And I'll explain that to you towards the end here. But so now you're done with all that. You are not finished at that point. At this point, remember, we bypassed the water heater earlier. What you're going to be doing at this point is now you're going to go ahead and open your water heater, and you're going to run some in there. Now, if you didn't put, you have two different ways you could do this. You could put enough in that water heater where it runs out the hole, or if you didn't, or if you went ahead and reinstalled the water heater plug after you drained it, that's okay too. Just count to like 4 or 5 when you're pulling some through your system, and you're good to go. That'll put enough antifreeze in the bottom of your water heater. Do not forget to put some antifreeze in your water heater. Now, the reason why I have you unbypass your water heater is because now this way here, next year when you go to de-winterize, it's already set for you. You've done it. Now all you got to do is run water through everything. Makes it so much easier. Get it done while you're doing this. That way you don't have to remove a panel and doing all that garbage. It makes it much, much easier. By the way, one thing I didn't cover on this is in the event that you had a water filtration system that was on your camper, make sure you would take that off. So if you have those ones that have the big canister and they're in your storage bin or whatever, make sure you take that water filter thing out of there. I would tell you to divide. They typically have a plug that you can put on those, so you're not wasting antifreeze, because that's going to fill up a big jug. So take that thing off and plug it. Hopefully that helps you. Worst case scenario, if you don't have the plug, take out the filter, put the canister thing back on it, and it's just going to fill up with antifreeze. So that's worst case scenario. Antifreeze is a heck of a lot less expensive, so don't let that bother you on that point. Lastly, of course, we had you had opened up the low point drains, blew them out, and then closed them again. And what's happening is, by you putting this antifreeze in the system, some is going to settle down in that low point drain for you. So now you've done all of the different faucets and so forth. You've got to have a little bit, and you're going to need a little hand pump. And this hand pump, you need to pump a little bit of antifreeze past your city water inlet. And also don't forget about your black tank rinse. Pump some, and with the black tank rinse, something I'd highly recommend you do is blow that out with a little bit of air as well. You might want to do like 30 PSI on that. And what that's doing is putting some water into your black tank, right? And then run some antifreeze through it. Because if you don't run enough antifreeze through that, if you didn't blow your black tank rinse out, what's going to happen is you don't put enough antifreeze in there. That sprayer thing that's going in there is what's going to have an issue. It's going to freeze over the winter. So be sure that you do that. And that way there you won't have an issue with that at that point. Now, for those of you that have the dishwasher and or ice maker, those things you're going to want to go ahead and turn on, and actually turn it on so that it's pulling antifreeze through the system. You're going to want to try to make in your refrigerator, it's going to be an overnight type thing. So at this point, you might want to wait till you get home and plug it into the house, because it's going to do is be going into your the ice maker as well as your dishwasher. Run that on the ice maker. Make a couple of sets of ice through that, and then dishwasher, have that at least run some antifreeze in there. It doesn't need to run a full cycle, but you want to run it to make sure that it's pulling enough antifreeze into the dishwasher. Okay, so now you've got all your antifreeze through everything. You've opened your water heater. That's done. Now you're done with all that. Now, what you're going to need to do is you're going to want to take your bottle. Hopefully, you have a little bit more antifreeze left over, and you're going to want to go in and you're going to want to pour a little bit in each sink drain, your shower drain, as well as a toilet. Now, understand that this is going to stain, so make sure that you clean up your sinks, your shower, wipe up any mess that might be in your toilet. Also, do the same thing for your outside sink. So keep that in mind. That's something that you'll be much happier come the springtime. Now, understand that this antifreeze is not poisonous. You could drink it if you wanted to, but it's not poisonous. Make sure that you are using the proper antifreeze for your system. Don't just buy the cheapest out there. Look at the specs. You want something that's going to go ahead and work, especially for the area that you're in. Don't settle for the less expensive one. Now, I want to go over one other possibility that there might be. Some of you all may not have the bypass kit on there. You may not have the Nautilus system. Now, worst case scenario, although it's a heck of a lot cheaper for you to just go buy a bypass kit and put it on the water pump. But worst case scenario, and I would really never recommend this, I would not recommend that you go ahead and pour a bunch in your freshwater tank and use your water pump to do it, because you're going to have to use gallons, probably 10, 12, 15 gallons to get it up high enough where it's going to be able to come through the system so that you can actually utilize everything. One other thing I didn't mention, that be sure that you open up the spigot. You're going to have to get yourself some type of bucket, maybe a hose with a bucket. Maybe you get a hose and you hook it up and run it through the shower for your washing machine. So I'm getting lost here. Sorry about that, folks, but I appreciate you hanging in there. So at that point, now it's just a matter of cleanup, put everything away, and you are good to go till next year. And that, by the way, everything that I just went over with you, it doesn't matter whether you have you could use this on a pop-up, travel trailer, hybrid, a motorhome, fifth wheel, any RV that has those systems, it's all going to be the same. It's just going to be the amount of antifreeze that you're going to need to put through all those systems. So any questions, by all means, put them down in the comments down below. And by the way, I'll be doing these things, and I already have a bunch of questions from people that have been asking me over a long time, over the last few months, as well as people asking me questions. Customers are coming in, and I'm going to be answering these questions next Friday. So if you have any burning questions, come on. And by the way, one Friday out of the month, I'm going to be doing a live podcast on YouTube. So that way there, people can come on, and at that time, they can ask me these questions. So stay tuned. Got a lot more information coming for you. If there's a particular topic that you would like me to cover for you, by all means, hit me up in a comment down below. Shoot me an email. Shoot me a text. Give me a call. Whatever. I'm here to give you all the information that you need so that you can go make memories that last a lifetime. I do appreciate you all watching, listening out there on that streaming service, and we'll be back at you again next Friday, same time, same bat channel. So thank you very much, and you all have a great day.